Mr. Jeff Paterson, how are you?
I'm good, Matt. How are you doing?
Yeah, fantastic. We'll start with the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question. Is this the year, Jeff? Fantastic goal last night in overtime. Is this the year JT Miller gets league-wide respect?
Yeah, I saw the poll question posted. Got me thinking a little bit. That sometimes is a dangerous proposition, but look, nobody's going to forget the pouting and the lack of back check in Calgary in that game a couple of seasons ago, or the stick over the back of the net in Winnipeg. Those are on his resume. That's part of JT Miller. But I think everybody deserves an opportunity to grow and evolve and mature, and he's certainly done that. I think the fact he was an all-star last year, I think the fact that he got 99 points 2 seasons ago got people's attention that, hey, this guy isn't just a point a game guy. Like, he might be better than that. And then to get back there and get to 103 last year, he's going to be on Team USA at the World or the Four Nations face off in February. So I think he's getting respect around the National Hockey League. I think it's gradual. Yeah. I know that there are publications that had him as a third tier player. Maybe we put way too much stock in some of that. And on nights like last night, he turns out to be a difference maker. Was he the best player on the ice start to finish? I don't think you could say that. I think Quinn Hughes pretty clearly was. But when the chips were down, the Canucks needed somebody to come through. As on opening night with the tying goal against Calgary, you turn to JT Miller, and he generally doesn't let this team down. So, I think he is starting to get his due around the National Hockey League. And I think if he keeps his play at a level that it's been really over the last couple of seasons, it's going to just continue to he's going to work his way onto more and more people's radar for the right reasons.
Well, and this is why we ask, because you look at his point totals over the last 3 seasons or 5 seasons, whatever time frame you want to look at, and he's right there with the top guys in the National Hockey League. And it seems just like respect and acknowledgement of those sorts of achievements have been a little slower to come, because you take a look at lists like, top NHL players and where he ranks, Jeff, like there are still a bunch of publications out there that have Elias Pettersson ahead of him, right? Who don't seem to understand that JT Miller is the number one centerman here in Vancouver. And talked about it with Blake. When you're a bad team on the West Coast, you are very easy to ignore, out of sight, out of mind. Well, Canucks had a good team last year. Suspect they will have another good team this year. And so I do wonder whether JT Miller is going to get more run across the league, national media, both Canada and the U.S. Incidentally, did you see that?
Quickly, I look, the 99 points a couple of years ago, those were pretty empty calories, as you said, on a bad team, right? And I think people, he's just getting his 103 on a team that wins 50 games and 109 points. That's different. And so I think maybe that does bring him into a different realm. The other thing is, to get to 103, pretty balanced, right? Like, he wasn't a 50-goal scorer, and he wasn't a 70-assist guy. His numbers were close to 40, 60. And so when we're talking about the great goal scorers in the NHL, he's not going to be in that discussion, the great playmakers. But when we talk about complete players in the National Hockey League, I think you damn well have to talk about JT Miller these days as one of the most complete guys that can beat you in a whole bunch of ways.
Incidentally, did you see the video from Casa Miller last night? With Natalie Miller, we're going to play it here on the stream. Natalie Miller, first of all, great awareness from Natalie to turn on the camera when she did, right? Like, and then the kids celebrate. Well, one kid celebrate. One kid is fixated on those McNuggets.
Right. I mean, my takeaway from there is that I think the dogs were looking at the opportunity to get the McDonald's, right?
They sure were.
Let kids dance around the room, go nuts. Their dad's just scored and they've won. Dogs are looking at that entry point to grab the last McNugget off the table.
Oh, we all know that dog. Kevin Lankinen, Jeff, is he now the Canucks starting goaltender?
I thought so after the Philly performance last week, and Rick Tocchet threw a bit of a curveball to start the trip in Tampa, and Silas was fine. They got the kind of goaltending they needed to hang in that hockey game. But I mean, look at Lankinen. Points, 3 of the 4 points that have been available to the Canucks with him in goal, has given up 2 goals in regulation in both games and a power play goal in each of those games. So just 1 goal against 5-on-5 in his first 2 starts. He has just delivered really quality net mining, as I think we thought he would. I wondered if the late start and the late arrival would put him behind the 8 ball, but I think that storyline is that ship sailed now. I mean, he's in there. He talked about how comfortable he feels. He's getting an opportunity. And if I'm making the call for Saturday in Philadelphia, absolutely. I just think that how could you go away from a guy that's delivering results when a team needs a little bit of stability in that position? The Canucks still aren't scoring many goals. That's one thing that has to come. But as they await that, you need that kind of goaltending that can hold down the fort. And, going against Bobrovsky last night, it was a question of who was going to blink in the third period and overtime. And ultimately, it was the guy at the other end of the ice. So, it feels to me like Kevin Lankinen. I know it's early in the season and not a huge body of work, but I think he has inched ahead of Artur Silovs in the here and now to be the guy that the Canucks probably should lean on if they're going to get out of this alternating starts of their two goaltenders.
Yeah, and Blake was talking about how because you don't have any back-to-backs here, you can give him a run if so be it, if you choose, or if he goes out and has a poor game in Philadelphia, you've got a decent option there in Silovs for the Chicago game. So we'll see how they handle the goaltending. But I was also struck, Jeff, Lankinen just sounds so happy to be here. It kind of reminds me of Casey DeSmith last year, that he feels like he has found a good fit for him, because that was the one thing that you wondered about. He, was a late free agent, signed for less money and less term than he wanted. After camps had started, it almost felt like he was pressured into signing here because this was the best opportunity. But so far, it looks like it's been an excellent fit with the way he has talked about his own game and with the way he's talked about the players in front of him and how they played in front of him.
Yeah, and sometimes it is a fit, and so much attention on all of the newcomers for the Vancouver Canucks, and Jake DeBrusk still looking for his first goal, and I think Danton Heinen still trying to find his role. Kiefer Sherwood with the 10 hits last night has settled in, but Forbert on defense, Brandstrom to a lesser degree. We're still trying to figure out ultimately what do the Canucks have in these players, but I think through two starts, you can see that they've got a guy in Kevin Lankinen that is going to give them credible NHL goaltending. And Matt, when you look around the league, and we talked about this at the time of the signing, Anaheim was rumored to be in, and then John Gibson goes down and out for the better part of a month. Good fortune for the Canucks to get the deal done. Boston, obviously, with the Swayman situation. You look at Colorado right now, they can't get through a game without giving a goaltender the hook. You don't think Kevin Lankinen would look a little better than what they've got there as a goaltending option? So the timing of all this, and give management credit, they didn't waver. We talk about Lankinen not blinking in the third period. It became a game of chicken. We knew that there was interest on both sides. Lankinen obviously wanted a little more, and the Canucks were take it or leave it. And ultimately, if you want a seat at an NHL table, he elected to take it. And so I don't think anybody's going to feel sorry for him making what he's making this year, but it's going to be a showcase year for him to earn a better and probably a longer contract, whether it's here or elsewhere. So I think he has to just look at this as an opportunity when he gets in there, and he's making the most of it so far.
Quinn Hughes sets a career high in ice time a week ago after Tyler Myers left that game early. He sets a career high in shots last night. He winds up with 9 and had a shot at the Canucks record by a defenseman, which was 12. I saw you were tracking that. Also, for a guy who wants 20 goals this year, Jeff, he has stated that, 20 goals, that's his aim. That means you got to get one every 4 games. Well, mission accomplished. He's on the board there as well. A thought or two about the captain's game.
Well, it's just funny looking at the graphic there. Like, how do I not remember a 12-shot Alex Edler game? And I was covering the Canucks when Jovo got to a dozen as well. And
I don't either. Jeff, we were sitting here, Blake and I, talking and going, do you remember Edler with 12 shots in a game in November?
I mean, the punchline obviously is shin pads for days, right? Like, how did he get 12 through and on goal? But the numbers don't lie. He did that. And Quinn was at 9 with half a third period to go in tie game. So I kind of thought that he would probably chip away and get a little closer. But 9 shots, 14 attempts. He's just such a special player. And I'm not telling people things they don't already know, but nights like that just underscore how impressive he is when he takes over games. He is a secret weapon. And you saw it in overtime, Matt. Like, the attention of all 3 Panthers are just drawn to Hughes like a moth to a flame, and it opens up half the ice for JT Miller with a head of speed, and he did the rest from there. Paul Maurice rolling the dice with 3 forwards throughout overtime. A defenseman didn't see. You got Aaron Ekblad, you got other guys, didn't have a defenseman on the ice. If they score and win, we think, oh, this guy's a genius. But if they don't, then he opens himself to questioning. And sure, he would have loved to have had Barkov and or Tkachuk as 2 of the forwards available to him. But I think you saw that the forwards, they're fixated on Quinn Hughes. And at this level, even if you stop for half a beat guys are too good. JT Miller was able to expose them and get that shot away. So Miller scores, he gets the glory, but it was a first-star, all-star performance for Quinn Hughes. And even on that goal, it's just a pass back to the neutral zone, but it's the positioning and the attention that he draws that opens up a half the sheet of ice for JT Miller.
I mean, it's tailor-made 3-on-3 for Quinn Hughes. The Canucks should win a lot of games in overtime because of the personnel that they can throw out there. You're absolutely right about Maurice. I mean, you got to win the draw. If you're playing 3 forwards, you got to win the draw because you give up possession now in the 3-on-3 overtime. It can be very difficult to win it back. And good to hear JT Miller talking about how they had talked tactics and strategy about overtime after 2 of the first 3 games going there and finally getting a win beyond regulation. Let's talk about the other star, Paterson. 4 shot attempts, team high 4 block shots. He had chances. He looked dangerous again. We had asked yesterday on the Surrey Mitsubishi poll question whether or not he was going to bump the slump, but a word or two on Paterson, and if you think this could be at least a step in the right direction for number 40.
Yeah, these days I'm prefacing any answer about him with the bar is so low right now that hopefully he climbs over it, uses it as a springboard, and builds. He had the chance in the first period that I'm still not sure how he missed, but I like the fact that he's in front of the net. The puck gets to him. He's got to figure it out and convert there, but start with the chances. Second period sets up Jake DeBrusk on a 2-on-1, and again, DeBrusk still looking for his first goal. But those are some baby steps. I want him involved in blocking shots and hits and those types of things, but ultimately I want to see him putting his stamp on hockey games on the score sheet. So Canucks didn't have a ton of power play time, although I noted this on Rink Wide. He really is an afterthought on the power play now. Like, they work the puck to that left side of the ice, and it's almost like they freeze him out over on the right. And, if his contribution there is to be a decoy, he's too good a player not to handle the puck at some point when you've got an extra man out there. So power play is a work in progress. It had a little bit of success in the opening game against Calgary, but really since then hasn't done a lot, and didn't do a lot last night. The first power play, just the 1 shot on goal, and it was a long shot from Quinn Hughes. So I have trouble getting excited about the performance from Elias Pettersson, but maybe it's a different conversation. Hochletter hits the post there in the third period. Pettersson's out there on the ice with Garland. Great play from Garland to slip it across to Höglander. Maybe we look at things a little differently if that line ends up getting the winner and we say, hey, at least it was in on that play. He makes a little touch pass at the blue line. All those kinds of things. But very much a work in progress here. Bottom line is they won the hockey game, and maybe that alleviates a little bit of pressure on all of them, Pettersson included. So on to Philadelphia. There's more there. You just want to see it sooner rather than later.
Going to read the JT Miller quote about Connor Garland and then ask you about how the tweet you put out about how you'd reordered the top 6. Miller on Garland, quote, he's probably playing the best hockey of his career right now. That's what Vancouver's saying. I'm just really happy he's playing well. I know you didn't take in all of his career in Arizona, but you tell me, is this the best he has looked as a Vancouver Canuck? And you say you'd stick with Höglander, Pettersson, and Garland, move DeBrusk up with Miller and Besser for next game. So a little bit more of a loaded up top 6 as opposed to a spread it out top 9.
I'm just glad that JT is giving Vancouver its props. He's in tune with what Vancouver collectively, I guess, the city is saying about Connor Garland, who to me had been the best Canuck through the first 3 games. I thought it was a slightly muted performance from Garland last night, but his motor's always going. Connor Garland was fine last night. I just don't think his game was at the level it was earlier in the first 3. But I like the idea of Elias Pettersson being forced to keep up with 2 guys whose work rate is super high. And I think, yes, it's nuts that we're talking about others having to bring out the best in an $11.6 million player, but that's where we are right now. Like, at the end of the season, if we're still having this conversation, then things have gone completely sideways. But in the short term, when it's not happening for Pettersson, put him with some guys that are always going to be working hard, force him to sort of up his work rate in that regard. And in the early going, hadn't really seen a lot between Pettersson and DeBrusk. So if you're moving Jake DeBrusk around, still trying to find the right fit for him, stylistically, I think he and JT Miller could work well and read off each other. But look, the Arshdeep Bain story is a terrific one. Local boy, makes the team he grew up watching, makes it to the NHL. But Matt, he's 10 games in, doesn't have a point, doesn't profile as any kind of scorer at this level yet, He has at lower levels, and maybe he'll get there. But in the top 6, not for me right now. And at some point, if Arshdeep's going to carve out a long NHL career, he's got to get past the local boy does good and find a way to impact these hockey games more than he is. And so
I was very surprised. Blake and I were very surprised to see that yesterday out of Coach, that Baines would get the real estate beside, as opposed to your big free agent who you've saddled down the lineup with guys who are less likely to help his offense in DeBrusk.
Well, yeah, I mean, DeBrusk drops and Sprong has sat out twice. And interesting that Sprong plays the home games where they could shelter him a little bit and hasn't played the road game. I don't think the season's not going to go that way. He's not going to play 41 home games and none on the road. But I do think in the early going, given what we've seen in the one miscue, certainly against Philadelphia that led to a goal, I think Rick Tocchet some reservations about playing him on the road. But then you're plugging Arshdeep Baines in, you're plugging Nils Amon in. Not much of a bottom line from those guys. And I know Amon had a point last night, but you got to get Sprong back in there, I would think, early Saturday night.
Yeah. And we have some fun with you and Rob and your Twitter fight about that yesterday. We'll see where Sprong winds up. As you say, goals are still, I think, more the problem than the team's defensive posture. What did you think of Brandstrom, and what did you think of the fact he played with Myers and they reordered there as well with Carson Soucy playing with Desharnais?
Well, yeah, except that's not really the way it shook down. They warmed up that way, and I don't know if Rick Tocchet was just throwing a bit of a curve at Paul Maurice, but Brandstrom ended up playing with Desharnais for most of his shifts, and then in the third period, barely played as they shortened the bench in a tight game. Not a surprise there. Look, this guy, his 24 hours or 48 hours from Abbotsford to Vancouver, a cross-continent flight, gets in late to South Florida, and then no morning skate with this new team that's acquired him. So really sight unseen until warm-up, and gets plugged in with a guy that he ends up not playing many shifts with throughout the hockey game. He was all right. He was fine. I know the underlying numbers weren't great. Part of that's Vinny Desharnais, and the underlying numbers are rarely great with him, and he's very much a work in progress. Irf and I sort of laughed on rink-wide. The first touch of the puck for Brandstrom was basically a grenade from Desharnais, just offloading some pressure, and Brandstrom was able to make a play and get out of trouble. Doesn't get scored on, and they win a hockey game. I mean, all of those things to me are baby steps in the right direction. Didn't hurt the hockey club in any way. Yeah, I think you have to be prepared to live with a few defensive miscues from a player like that, but the trade-off hopefully is spending less time in his own zone, moving the puck, transporting the puck, whatever. So, yeah, I think for a first look at him, it was all right. Mm-hmm. And we'll see where it goes. I think Forward's going to be away from the team, certainly in Philadelphia, maybe right through the road trip. So it would look like there's going to be more opportunities. He hadn't played an NHL regular season game since last year. So maybe he's able to shake off the cobwebs and a little bit of rust. I would think that he would get better with another opportunity here. So I would imagine he stays in the lineup. Does Rick Tocchet tamper with a winning lineup? I would say no, and try and build off what they accomplished down in Sunrise.
Last night featured the first fight in NHL history between two Latvians. It was Teddy's Blugers, and I am going to give him the S for this, versus Uvis Balinskis. Big hugs afterwards. Didn't even realize they were fighting a fellow countryman when it first went down. And milestones. Our old friend Luke Shen with 1,000 games, and Tyler Myers is going to join him in the 1,000-game club tomorrow in Philadelphia. You and Irf Gaffar are going to have rink-wide tomorrow after the game. Of course, it's an afternoon start. We will be down at Greta Bar. Come join us. Doors at 3, nationgear.ca for your tickets. Jeff, you're pinch hitting today on the Bet365 Bets of the Day. This segment proudly brought to you by Bet365. What do you got for us today? Where are you leaning on your pick?
Well, before we get to that, because you make a point of charting errors and omissions, I do have to say that Irf is going to be a healthy scratch on Saturday afternoon. So Patrick Johnson, PJ, is going to slide in and be my co-host on Rink Wide. I think Irf's going to be at the viewing party, but taking the afternoon off. So, we'll have PJ in. We'll have some fun with him. And just quickly on Teddy Bluger, in the absence of goals from others, like who had Teddy Bluger with 2 goals this early in the season when Petey's still looking for his first and Jake DeBrusk, but if they're not scoring a ton, they'll take contributions from guys like Teddy Bluger lower in the lineup. He scored against Philadelphia. They got a point out of that game, scores in Florida, and they win that hockey game. So those are not meaningless goals. They're contributing to victories. The fight, didn't really see that one coming. But hey, you do what you do, I suppose. We've already seen one Gordie Howe hat trick from a Canuck earlier this year in JT, and almost had another from Teddy Bluger. As for my line of the day, meaningless football game in the grand scheme at BC Place on Saturday. Lions and the Alouettes, and those can generally be tough when it comes to handicapping. Not really sure what you're going to see from either team, but it does feel like the Lions have something to play for here. Like, I know they can't alter their standings, but damn, like, personal pride. Let's start right there. Vernon Adams is going to get the start. We'll see what he can do with the opportunity here. So the Lions are 1.5 favorites over the Montreal Alouettes, who've had a terrific season to this point, but not just personal pride. Lions have a chance to finish 500 on the season, which is crazy when you think they were 5-1 at one point. You can get the Lions at 176 on the money line. I do think that somehow, some way, the BC Lions are going to find a way to get a victory, and this might be it for home games. You'd like to see them leave the fans that have supported them through thick and thin, and there's been plenty of both this year, leave them with a something. I know that there's a possibility of a Grey Cup on November 17th, but there's a lot of ground to cover between now and then. So they just have to worry about home game against the Alouettes to finish out the regular season.
Yeah, and Alouettes have submitted a depth chart that has a bunch of their starters there. They didn't play Cody Fajardo this past Thanksgiving, but he's listed there as the starting quarterback. You got a bunch of other starters who are listed. We'll see what Montreal decides to do, of course, and the Lions pinning their hopes now on Vernon Adams. Here's the thing. I'm going with another Vancouver team. The Caps need a win tomorrow in Salt Lake. Draw doesn't do them any good. So going to press for goals. I have it on good authority. Listen to the show later. They may give some up because they're going to be shooting for goals. The total there is 2.5, but it costs you $211 to win 100 at that. So not good enough for me. I'm going not over 2.5, not over 3.5, but over 5.5. That's right. Expecting 5 goals at plus 275. And just one program note here. When we conducted the interview with Vanni Sartini that you're going to see later in the program, we were unaware of this new wrinkle that the Caps would not be able to host a Wednesday wildcard game against Portland if that's the way it shakes out because of a previous booking at BC Place, and would have to go down to Portland even as the higher seed for that match. Disappointing, I'm sure, for the Caps and their supporters. Open an account with Bet365 today. Bet on a huge range of markets, so whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Use code VANBONUS when opening that account. Jeff, thanks for this. Have a great weekend. We'll be watching Rinkwide tomorrow.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, Matt.